So I'm at this wedding and I'm sitting at my assigned table, minding my own business, which is actually code for I'm never minding my own business when it comes to love relationships. But anyway, I couldn't help notice this gorgeous young man sitting next to a lovely young lady at the table. Now, they are hot and heavy. They are so into each other. Now, you may have noticed I used the word gorgeous to describe this guy, like 10 gorgeous. As I observed him, I thought to myself, if I were 20 years younger, real talk, when you get a certain age, there are guys and girls that you just need to leave alone and go find someone living in your own decade. That's just a little joke. Find love where you want. Anyways, so he was too young for me, so I couldn't have dealt with him anyways. Plus, I was in a relationship. I got standards. So anyway, back to the story. Besides the fact that he was incredibly attractive, I noticed how thoughtful and attentive he was to his date. Like he had eyes for no one else in the building. I ended up talking to this couple and found out that each of them were equally sweet and intelligent people. At one point, I asked how long they'd been dating. He responded, "We just met today here at the wedding at the table." I was stunned. As comfortable and intimate as they seemed, the instant connection was incredible. It looked like they had been dating for several months. A little while later, Anthony asked Camille and myself if we wanted another drink. After he excused himself, Camille and I immediately went into our girlfriend huddle and squealed and laughed and swooned over her new man. And I said, "Honey, you hit the jackpot." And her head hit the table in despair. "I can't date him," she says. "Why the hell not?" I say. "Because I'm going to graduate school abroad for 2 years next month." And I say, "So?" And she says, "Long distance relationships never work." And then I say, "You crazy, honey." And then she says, "Why should I set myself up to get hurt? You think that fine man is going to be monogamous with a girlfriend living in another country?" So I responded with a rhetorical question that only has one possible answer. "Not to be all up in your business, but you mean to tell me you're going to let that fine specimen God created for you walk out of here without your number, driver's license, social security number, and blood type?" Girl, regardless of the odds, I try. I could see that I had gotten to her. So I passed her my card and I told her that I was a relationship coach and that I could give her some tips to possibly help manage a long distance relationship with her new prospective love. And so that's what we did. So in this episode, it may appear that we're talking about just long-term relationships, but of course, with every other suggestion that helps enhance and grow a relationship, you can apply these suggestions to any type of relationship. And the bigger picture that we're looking at here is how can we get out of our own way when love knocks at our door? And we really are put in situations sometimes, like my friend Camille, where you have no choice but to answer that door because there's a tall, cool drink of water behind it for your thirsty self. So I'm giving you these suggestions, and of course, they may or may not work, as I always indicate. But anytime you are putting an effort, an honest, integral, intentional effort toward creating a relationship with someone, it's never a waste of time. So Camille and I came up, as we had our conversations, with a lot of different ways to maintain this long distance relationship. And I will tell you that this relationship not only withstood the 2 years she was out of the country, they also have continued their relationship. And I just heard recently that he put a ring on it. So I'm very happy for them. I want to dedicate this episode to my friends Camille and Anthony, and I'm wishing you a happy and beautiful life together. So I'm going to share some of your secrets for other people out there who might be entering into the same type of situation and are afraid to take the risk because of a challenge that they're facing. This is coming up next on Love Relationships, Real Talk. So of course, nothing is ever foolproof and nothing is ever surefire guaranteed when it comes to relationships. There's so many things that can happen, but if you don't take the risk, how will you ever know if it could have worked out or not? And remember, sometimes, especially when you have a connection like my friend Anthony and Camille had with one another, you have to just go for that. There's something in that for you. That was meant to be. And even though they ended up in marriage, even if your relationship doesn't work out using these tips, remember, relationships are there to help you grow and heal from the pains of the past. You get to learn more about yourself and who you truly are. You get to heal from things that have happened to you in the past. That's what relationships are for. And only 1 out of the 10 relationships that you might have in your lifetime are supposed to work. And then all the other 9, you learn from them. So my first tip for a long distance relationship is the biggest one of all, of course, and it's for every relationship, the most important one: regular and agreed upon communication. So of course, the only way people who are in a long distance relationship really get to interact with each other 90% of the time is by talking on the phone or by communicating in some way. Actually, in this day and age, which is really cool because we have all of these great ways of using technology to enhance our relationships that we have with people from a long distance. We can see them, we can interact with them through video chat. And I want to mention that not only is this a great way to actually have that face-to-face and see your love and interact with your love, it's also a good way to build on and create trust in a relationship. So before, I'm sure, when they had long distance relationships and they didn't have the technology that we have today and video chats weren't available, I'm sure that a lot of times you could be in a place or have conversations with people on the phone and be lying, right? And not be where you say you are or whatever the case is because that person can't actually see you. In the case of video chats, it not only gives you that personal touch in being with your love as if you were together, sort of. It also helps validate your commitment by actually being willing to be in a video chat so that they can see where you are and see what you're doing and who's around you. It gives you that credibility. And so video chatting is a good tool to use in a long distance relationship, not just for that face-to-face communication, but also to validate that, you know, you're available to talk to them anytime. You are okay with showing your face and showing your partner where you are by doing the video chat. And it's also an indication, you lovebirds out there, that if your partner is not willing to do video chats for whatever reasons, then that might be an indicator. So another way that you can also help build the trust in your long distance relationship in regards to communication is being reliable. So if you say you're going to call your love at 6 o'clock, you should be available to call them at 6 o'clock. So let's say after work, your friend who you work with asks you if you want to go have drinks. Now you're in a city by yourself. You're alone. You're single in the city, but you have this relationship with someone that does not live in the same city as you do in this long distance relationship. But you have free reign to move around the way you want to, because you don't have to go meet this person somewhere, or you don't have to physically meet this person somewhere, and you don't have to be home at a certain time because they're there waiting, or whatever the case is. So you have to really be intentional about showing up for your communications when you say that you are. It just helps build the trust. Tip number 2, be creative. Now, there are things that you're going to have to do in order to make connections with your long distance love. And a lot of times when you're being creative doing that, it makes them feel even more special that you took the time to do something that was unusual or unexpected. So that's definitely something you want to be thinking about when you're trying to make connections with your love. But don't do things that are like extraordinary, like fly into town unexpectedly after you just seen them the last weekend. Don't do things that you can't continue to do. Now, it's a nice surprise to show up for your love. Like you missed them so much, you had to see them again before they expected you, before your next month's visit or something like that. Like that's very sweet and everything, but it's not something that you can do just sporadically anytime that you want to. I wouldn't put it in place such that you create this expectation from your partner that you'd be willing or can do this ongoing when you're really not. So try to be creative, but don't do things that's going to set an intention or an expectation that you can't maintain. This kind of takes me into my tip number 3. And that is, when you do get together with your love, don't try to do these grand gestures. Whatever you do, it's something that you're willing to continue and maintain. In the case of long distance relationships, if you visit one another and you always do these, hugely grandiose gestures and romantic things, then it's not going to really reflect a real life situation when you do come together, possibly in marriage, and live together and live the day-to-day together. So don't create this idea of the relationship being something that it's not, or that it's not going to continue to be when you do interact with each other on a day-to-day basis. So when you get together, do normal stuff, hang out, watch TV on the couch. Don't go out every night. Don't take your partner out on the town every single time they come into town to see you, and show them a good time. Show them a good time at home. Now, one surefire way to kill a long distance relationship is being insecure. And the reason why it's even more so volatile for a long distance relationship to be insecure is that every interaction that you have with each other in your communication, or even when you see each other, is going to be tinged with this feeling that possibly the other person is not being faithful to you. You can't live that way, and you can't expect your partner to live that way either, or expect them to feel good about being with you if you're always questioning them about being faithful, or about treating you in a way that makes you feel more secure. They can't make you feel secure. You come secure in your own person before you even enter into the relationship. So when things happen, or they don't have time to do this or that, or you have expectations that they don't fulfill upon, it's not something that is totally devastating to you, that you can accept that and move on, because they do have their own life and you should have your life too. And so one way that I suggested for Camille and Anthony to keep their own lives active and busy outside of the relationship is, for Camille, she was doing her studies. So she dove into her studies. And for Anthony, he had a very busy and demanding career. So he dove into that. And then they shared those two things with each other, the ups and the downs and the day-to-day trials and tribulations that they were dealing with in that. And they were supportive of one another in that. And that makes, and that actually speaks to my tip number 10, which we'll get to. Obviously, when you're in a long distance relationship, it's very important that you address your sexual needs as well. So, of course, you have to get creative with your sex play. Now, I'm going to leave that to you to determine how you are creative sexually with one another. But you have to consider that if you're in a long distance relationship and you're not having that physical connection with one another, it doesn't mean every time you talk to each other you have to have phone sex. But it does mean that you have to have open and honest communication about what your partner needs from you sexually when you do have those interactions. And again, as a side tip, video chatting works beautifully for this tip. Now, one of the main reasons that I would suggest against people being in long distance relationships with each other is if they cannot afford to see each other. Because then what's the point, right? So if you can't afford to fly to see your partner, then you'll never see them. And if one person is doing all of the travel and the expenses around travel, again, that's going to create some animosity with your partner. If your partner is more financially sound than you are and it can afford it, I would personally suggest that what you can do to support that effort is one of a couple of things. One creative thing that I'm thinking might be supportive so that this animosity doesn't build. Like, I'm doing all the flying, I'm doing all the traveling, I'm always spending hundreds of dollars to try to see you and you're not to have that conversation is when you do plan to see one another and you can't pay fully, that you offer to pay half. And that you actually create a traveling schedule that allows for you to support them in paying for their travel. So if you'd like to see each other every month, but you can't afford to pay for half of a ticket every month, then pay every other month or every 3 months. You save money up and make sure that you get that to your partner so that they can pay for their ticket and come and see you. I'm thinking that another way that you can show some equity or fairness in those types of situations where one person is financially unable to do a lot of the traveling is that when they do come to see you or you go to see them, that you pay for the events that you do when you get there. If that's what happens, if that's what you're going to do, or you pay for dinners or groceries for the week that you're there, or whatever the case is, that you do what you can financially so that they don't feel like they're taking on all the burden. Now, tip number 7 may or may not be a factor that comes up for you in your long distance love, but it's something that I saw worked and was a big plus for Camille and Anthony's relationship. And that is that they had similar interests. So many interests in common. It was like nonstop talking they were doing in that first meeting. And so that's one thing that I saw that actually was a thread that helped keep their long distance relationship together, because they had so many interests that they did continue to do in their own personal lives that were similar to each other, that those were things that they can talk about. So now, tip number 8 and 10 are probably my absolute all-time favorites in regards to love relationships in general. One thing that's a huge turn on for me is when I connect with a person on a spiritual and emotional level. And so tip number 8 is to practice being that with your long distance love. And it really shows up a lot with them because you're in such constant verbal communication with one another, or written communication, that you have more opportunity to get to know each other on a much more deeper and vulnerable level, because really the crux of your relationship is you talking with each other. because that honesty and that vulnerability is something that we don't have with a lot of people. And if you can create that in your love relationship, if you can harness that, that's good stuff. That's good stuff. Now, number 9, I think I mentioned a little bit already before when I talked about make them a part of your life, your everyday life. And so you should always stay engaged and up to date with how things are going with them, for them at work, their family members, their friends, get their names, listen intently when your love is talking about these people or telling you about these people, because one of the most irritating things, and this is something that came up for another couple, because this person was not good with names. The man in this case would talk about his friends, and the female would always have to ask, now, who is that? Tell me about that person again one more time. And it was like, and again, and again, and again, not just one more time, but again. And he had to keep reintroducing these people that are important to him to her, because for whatever reasons, there was a lack of listening there for her, that she couldn't hold on to these people's names. So when he was debriefing or venting or whatever, he would have to stop that energy and familiarize her with who he was talking about. And it was just utterly ridiculous. And that was so irritating for him. This is why I actually included number 9. It didn't show up in Camille and Anthony's situation, because when they talked to each other, they were so connected with each other that they totally got like who they were talking about and who they were dealing with and situations that happen. And it really lets a person know that you care and that you're abreast to what's going on in their lives, and it matters to them when you actually ask them. So what happened today at work? I can't wait to hear what happened with your boss and that whole situation. What happened with the project that you were working on? You were working so hard on it. When your partner hears that, come on now. Anyway, my last tip is be your love's soft place to fall, even though you're not there. And it kind of is connected to that last tip that I mentioned, that be that person that they can't wait to tell when something great happened. Be the person that they want to tell first. Be that person that they have to call. It's like, look, I had to talk to you. I am so pissed right now. Be that person. You do that on a consistent basis, it builds your credibility in their heart and in their mind, and it makes you that person that they want to go to. That's the person you should be anyway in your love relationship, isn't it? And if it's not, it's something to consider as a part of the relationship that really needs rectifying, when your love doesn't feel like you're the first person they want to go to in any situation, whether it be celebratory or whether it be a challenge that they're dealing with. So for those of you who are out there who want to start dating and you're afraid to do it, and especially because that person is long distance, isn't this doable? Can you not do this? I think you can. So thanks for listening. I hope this helped. Please like my videos. And if you thought this was a good video, share it with a friend entering into a long distance relationship. It helps so much when you share my videos with other people and that you like them and you leave your comments, because it keeps the conversation going. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time on Love Relationships Real Talk.